Hey guys, welcome to the 5th episode of my poker vlog. This one takes place at Texas Card House in North Austin. I play mostly 1-2 no limit in this one, Texas Hold'em that is, and we have some Bomb Pot PLO hands mixed in as well. I buy in for $150 twice this time, so $300 total, to give you a little bit of context of my stack size throughout the session. And this one in particular, we run into a, we'll just call him the villain, halfway through the session here when he sits down at our table. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at some of the hands I had. First hand of note, I'm dealt ace-jack offsuit in the small blind. We see the under the gun limp, the hijack ends up raising to $10, and the button calls. And since I haven't been there long, I just call as well. Big blind calls, and the under the gun player calls as well. And we see 5 players to the flop. We get a flop of Jack 10-3 rainbow, so I've got top pair, top kicker. I check to the pre-flop raiser who continuation bets for $20. It's a pretty small bet, and when it folds to me, I decide to re-raise to $65 to protect my hand from any of the players left to act behind me. Fortunately, everybody folds, and I pick up the pot right there. For this next hand, I'm sitting with ace-10 suited and spades sitting in the low jack. We see one limper, and I decide to raise to $10. The small blind calls and the limper calls as well, and everyone else folds, so we see 3 players to the flop. The flop comes 5-4 queen with 2 spades, so I flop the nut flush draw. The small blind checks dark, and it's a good spot to continuation bet since I flopped the nut flush draw, so I make it $16, and we see the small blind call and the third player fold. The turn brings the 8 of diamonds, so I miss my flush, and I don't have a pair. When the small blind checks to me, it feels like a good spot to check behind, hoping that I can improve on the river, so I take my free card. The river brings the 3 of spades, so I hit the nut flush, and I'm only losing to a straight flush here, which there's no reason to be worried about it. When the small blind leads into me for $45, it's only a matter of figuring out how much I want to raise for in hopes of getting a call. I decide to make it $145 total, so $100 more to the better. And after a good 20 seconds of thinking, he makes the call, and we scoop a $354 pot. Thank you. For this next hand, it's a PLO Bomb Pot hand, and I've got ace queen 8-6 with clubs, and I'm sitting in the hijack. There's 6 players to the flop, and we see a flop of ace king jack with 2 diamonds on top, and 4 ace king with 2 clubs on bottom. So I've got top pair with a gut shot straight draw on top, and top pair with the nut flush draw on bottom. The early position player bets pot for $30, so I call, the button calls, and one other player calls, bringing 4 players to the turn. The turn brings the 2 of clubs on top and the queen of diamonds on bottom. So there's no improvement to my hand on the top board, and we actually lose one of the club outs for the bottom board onto the top board. On the bottom board, we pick up 2 pair, but we're losing to Jack 10, which makes it straight. It checks to me, and I don't want to see a pot-sized bet from the button who could punish with position, and I have a strong enough hand and draw that I could get some folds, so I decide to bet out for $50. We end up getting 1 fold, with the button and 1 early position player calling my bet. The river brings the 4 of diamonds on top and the 5 of clubs on bottom. I pick up the nut flush on the bottom board, and I'm playing solely for that board now. When it checks to me, I push all in for $170. The button thinks for a while before folding, and the early position player calls. As expected, I just win the bottom half, and we chop the pot for $320 each.
He's looking like a flush as well.
Alright.
Glad I got out.
The baby is the flushes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You. Thank you.
In this next hand, I've got king jack offsuit sitting in the small blind. 2 players limp into the pot, and I decide to raise to $15. The big blind folds, and the 2 limpers end up calling. The flop brings 9-5-2 with 2 clubs. Given that I raised out of the small blind, I feel like my hand could easily be interpreted as an overpair to the board here, so I decide to play the hand out like that's what I've got. I lead for $25, and we see 1 fold while the other player calls. The turn brings the 5 of spades. It doesn't improve my hand, but given them trying to represent an overpair at this point, I decide to bet again. I lead for $50. My opponent thinks shortly before pushing all in for $150 total. Since I have no equity, I decide that I've got to fold the hand at this point.
There you go.
Good move, bro.
This next hand is another PLO Bomb Pot. I'm dealt ace queen 5-5, and I'm sitting on the button. There's 7 players to the flop. The flop brings 10-5 jack rainbow on top and king 9-4 with 2 hearts on bottom. I've got bottom set along with the gut shot to the ace high straight draw on the top board, and I've got nothing on the bottom board. The player who just sat down, who will turn out to be our villain of the hour, leads for $30. I call and everyone else folds. The turn brings the king of clubs on top and the 7 of clubs on bottom. I pick up the nuts on top with my ace high straight. The villain leads for $80, and I push all in with my nutted hand for $180. Villain announces that he has 5 pairs and calls. His announcement basically tells me that I don't want to see the board pair on the river. The river brings the jack of spades on top and the king of hearts on bottom. Both boards pair. I pick up a boat with my 5s full, but given the villain's announcement, I imagine I've got a worse boat than he does. The opponent reveals that he's got king jack 9-4, giving him jacks full of kings on the top board, which beats my 5s full, and kings full of 9s on the bottom board. He hits a 5-outer on the river on that top board, scooping the pot. The very next hand I'm dealt ace 9 suited in spades, and I'm sitting on the button again. The villain from the last hand races to $10, and I decide this is a strong enough hand that I can re-raise, so I make it $40 in position. Everyone folds to the villain, who calls. The flop comes 6-5 king with 2 diamonds. The villain checks to me, and I continuation bet for $35. The villain folds, and I take it down.
Oh, you should have played that time.
Ah! Nice hand, bro.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
The next noteworthy hand is a PLO Bomb Pot. We've got 6 players to the flop, and I've got king, queen, jack 8 with diamonds. The flop comes 9, queen, 10 with 2 diamonds on top, and jack 3, 7 with 2 hearts on bottom. So I flop the nut straight and flush draw on top, and top pair on the bottom board. The player across the table bets pot for $30. The villain on my right calls, and I call as well to see the turn. The turn brings the jack of spades on top and the 4 hearts on bottom. I'm not happy about the jack since I no longer have the nuts, but I think I have to go with my hand given the stacks. One of my opponents goes all in for his last $20. The villain from the earlier hands on my right calls. I push all in, and the villain ends up folding. On the river, we see the 3 of spades on top and the 3 of clubs on bottom. My opponent flips his hand, and I see that he has king jack for the same flop straight as me on the top board. It takes a moment before I realize he also has an ace, meaning that he turned a higher straight than me, winning that board. On the bottom board, all I have is a pair of jacks, and my opponent's got a 3 in his hand as well, giving him 3s full of jacks on that board, meaning he's scooping the pot.
3 on both boards, bro. And the 3 gave you the bigger
In this next hand, I've got 10-9 offsuit, and I'm sitting under the gun. It's short-handed, so I decide to raise to $6. The cutoff decides to re-raise and makes it $20. It folds back to me, and I decide to make a loose call to defend. The flop comes jack 4 king with 2 clubs. I flop the bottom end of a gut shot, which is not really good on this board, but when I check, my opponent checks behind. The turn brings the 9 of clubs. I pick up a pair to go along with my gut shot. I check to my opponent again, and he bets out $15. I might be good here with just my 9, but I have outs if not, and I decide to make the call since it's a pretty small bet. The river brings the 9 of diamonds. I pick up trips now. I check to the opponent, hoping that he'll bet at the pot again. Unfortunately, he checks behind, announcing he just has ace-queen high. I'm happy to take the win, though.
Best thing for me today. I'm telling you.
This next hand is yet another PLO Bomb Pot. I've got queen 9-9-7 with spades, and I'm sitting in the big blind. We've got 6 players to the flop. The flop brings 7-3-7 on top and 6-9 jack on bottom. I flop trips on top and second set on the bottom board. Given the strength of my hands on both boards, I'm definitely going to be pushing hard. The main villain checks to me, and I bet $25. I end up getting 3 callers, and we've got 4 players to the turn. The turn brings 2 of hearts and the 5 of spades. There's now a straight opportunity on the bottom board, but I'm still going with this hand given that I have outs if a straight got there, and I'm probably still good on top. The villain leads for pot, $130, and I go all in for $105 total, and everyone else folds. The river brings the 4 hearts on top and the 6 of clubs on bottom. The board pairs on bottom, which is what I want to see. The villain shows jack 10-5-5 for a lower boat on the bottom board and nothing but a pair of 5s on the top board. I finally scoop a pot against the villain.
Oh, you coming over here too?
Finally.
Yes, me out.
Thank you.
This next hand I've got pocket jacks, and I'm sitting on the button. The under the gun player raises to $15, and the villain on my right re-raises to $45. I've been aggressive, and there's not really a reason for me to slow down when I have an actual hand, so I 3-bet to $150. It folds back to the villain, who calls, bringing the pot to $318. The flop is not pretty, though. We see king 2 ace with 2 hearts. It's 2 overcards to my pair. It's about the ugliest flop I could hope to see here. The villain checks to me, and I bet $100 into the pot. Looking back though, I really don't like my bet here. If I had pocket aces or pocket kings, or even ace king or ace queen, I'd probably check behind to try to convince the villain to call in later streets. Given my actual hand, I'm likely way behind, and I think checking to get a free card is the much better play here. I've also left myself $85 behind, which is just awkward all around. As it stands, the villain ends up pushing all in on top of me, and I'm punished for my awkward bet. I end up making the fold since I imagine I'm way behind the villain at this point, but I wish I had that $100 back. In this last hand, I'm dealt pocket sixes and I'm sitting in the low jack. An early position player raises to $10. There's several calls behind him, and I call as well in hopes of hitting a set, and we see a couple of calls behind me as well. The flop comes Queen 9 Jack with 2 spades. I miss my set, and I'm pretty much folded in my head at this point, just waiting for the action to come around to me. There's a couple of checks, and one player who's short goes all in. After a bit of thinking, the villain on my right ends up going all in as well. I'm sure I'm pretty much drawing dead at this point, so I throw my hand in. But wait a second, my cards are in my left hand, but I just threw something from my right hand forward.
Oh, all right. Fuck, so I meant to throw my cards and I threw a chip. Holy shit.
Wow, that's a pretty good one.
Oh my god. I can't believe I just did that.
That's a pretty good one. We'll let you pull it back.
I threw my chip and I meant to throw my cards and I threw the chip in my other hand. Fuck me.
What? Obviously.
All right, here we go.
That's a pretty good flop, Josh.
Obviously.
The rest of what?
No, I have my cards, but I meant to fold them and I threw the wrong. I had my chip in the other hand.
He had less than
I
Josh.
said it right before the flop came out. I said, give me something to shove.
While waiting for the action, I was replaying the jack's hand from before in my head, and I accidentally threw the wrong hand forward. I had a dollar chip in my right hand, which was acting as a card protector, and that accidentally signified an all-in. Unfortunately, we're pretty much drawing dead at this point. The other players flip over the top end of the straight and the bottom end of the straight, and I would need to hit runner cards to make any kind of hand at this point. So I'm all in for $71 on a board where I'm essentially drawing dead and had no intention of continuing. The turn and river bring the 2 of spades and the 4 of diamonds, and I have to turn over the rest of my stack. That was a pretty frustrating, embarrassing, disappointing way to end my session. Obviously did not mean to go all in on that last hand. Just kind of got lost in thought and threw the wrong hand forward. I think the problem is that I was using a poker chip as a card protector. So with that in mind, I decided to go ahead and invest in an actual card protector. So you know, it costs me less to invest in this than it will to accidentally push my stack into the middle of the pot in the future. So this one's from the Lodge. They actually just opened a new location 2 doors down from where they were before, and my next vlog is going to take place there. So I'll take you through a little guided tour of the Lodge in my next vlog if you join in for that one. In the meantime, I appreciate any likes and subscribes. It helps to get new followers, it helps the algorithm on YouTube. So until next time, thanks for tuning in. See you then.